Hey everybody, and thanks for tuning in to the Ephrata Community Church Weekly Podcast. Conversation with our pastors and leaders meant to continue encouraging you to know God, know freedom, know purpose, and make a difference.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hey, thanks for joining us today. We've really enjoyed sharing these weekly podcasts with you, and I trust it's been helpful to you. Most of the time, as we get together in this weekly podcast, we do a bit of a reflection on what happened the weekend before and on the message and so forth. And today's going to be just a little bit different. But before I get into that, I do want to say, man, what a fantastic celebration we had this past weekend. If you were here for our 4 weekend services, we had baptismal weekend, and during the quarantine, it's something that we've actually not done since earlier this year, and it's something that we really miss in congregational body life. And so it was a fantastic weekend. I mean, the testimonies were significant. For me, as I'm up front there and we're pronouncing a blessing and baptizing people, man, you just feel the power of God. And I can only imagine, and truly only imagine, the significant things that God's doing in the lives of those that are being baptized. It is so incredibly significant. And of course, one of the things from this past weekend is that there would have been, I think it's either 8 or 9 people that would have received spontaneous baptism. It happened at every single service, all 4 weekend services, where people stepped in and they hadn't planned on being baptized. And we taught on the significance of what baptism is. And people were motivated by the Holy Spirit to just step in and get baptized. And that happened at every service. And man, what an awesome celebration and significant testimonies, more of which that you're going to be hearing out of that as well. So one of the things I promised this past weekend was, as many of you would know, I recently would have been on what was originally planned to be a 6 weeks research sabbatical, and wanted to give a little bit of a report of that. First of all, I would want to say a couple things. Thank you to the congregation of Ephrata Community Church for providing that for us, for all pastors. And the way that works here at Ephrata Community Church is it's a 7-year sabbatical cycle. So, after 7 years of full-time employment, there's a sabbatical which is designed to help the pastor or leader do research and retool and rest and kind of get a fresh perspective for the next phase. And the reason why congregations do that is, including us, is that ministry is, as you can imagine, so incredibly consuming that you almost really lose yourself in the midst of the work that you do. Now, that's okay, really. I mean, I think we want to give ourselves wholeheartedly and fully to the work. But then there's a fresh perspective that we need to get as, when God's calling us to a new level or God's calling us to some new things. And sometimes we just need to step out of the day-to-day in order to get that perspective to move forward. So that was planned. And because of some of the things that we've been through when it comes to, we had a building campaign and a transition. 5 years ago, there was a church plant. Like, it's hard to find actually a good time to step away from that. And so as a result of that, in our 7-year sabbatical cycle, I think I was at either year 9 or year 10. And so it was high time to do that, and especially after what we've been through this year. That 6-week sabbatical research ended up getting shortened by a couple of things that occurred in late July and early August. And so it got shortened to about a month, which is perfectly okay. I feel like God did what he wanted to do and needed to do in me in that time. And I didn't want to take that time and tack it on the end because, coming back for baptism. This coming weekend, we're installing Josh Vanderplate as our pastor of worship, which is such a significant thing there as well. But in stepping into this time of research, there were 3 things that going into it I had pre-planned that I felt like for us as a congregation that I needed to step in and do some research and get some clear vision on so that we can continue to move forward in all that God has called us to do. I wanted to share those 3 areas with you. So one is how do we expand? We as a congregation here we meet in Clay Township, and people come to Clay Township from all over to be a part of the congregation, which is great. I'm honored by that and blessed by what God is doing. But one of the original intentions of building the building that we have now was not to gather people in Clay Township, but how does this facility, the resources that we have here, how can we use it to actually expand into other communities? And one of the things about Central Pennsylvania is that we have a lot of small communities that are anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 people that are very community oriented. And we've kind of grown into a culture where it's expected that those people leave that community to go to, whether it's a big box store or even like a church. But I have a real heart for those communities. And I think those communities are worth investing in. And I'm not going to go ahead and mention, but I think about how do we as a larger congregation support ministry that's happening right in those communities, and how do we develop ministry right in those communities with a heart for that community and to really have the pulse of it and minister to that community. And so I wanted to explore expansion models and how that's done, whether it's a house church model and how we launch and plant those, campus expansion model, or even church planting. And so I would have spent some time in Ashland, Massachusetts, with a congregation called Connect Church. Derek Fry is the pastor there, and many of you would know the executive pastor. His name is Jerry Schertzer. Jerry was once part of here at Ephrata Community Church. And the culture, while there's many differences, that whole community aspect is very much similar to here in Pennsylvania. And so I wanted to hear their perspective and hear their model and hear even their very recent experience in beginning to do that as well. Been very helpful, and establishing an ongoing relationship with them that can help sharing and resources. The second thing that I would have investigated during this time is a unique funding model, which the two of those actually go together. So back in March, I would have met a pastor. We were together at a pastor's roundtable meeting, and his name is Kurt Borkland. He's part of Orchard Hills Church in Pittsburgh. It's actually north of Pittsburgh in a place called Wexton, if you're familiar with that area. And if you got the emails that were going out called the Song and a Prayer, he would have participated in that, and you probably would have heard some devotional and some things from Orchard Hill Church there in Pittsburgh. And he developed a model somewhat out of a stressful time, but then it became a model that worked very, very well. Stress oftentimes breeds innovation and forward-going vision. And it was a model that actually from year to year funded an ongoing vision that actually held the leadership accountable for doing what they were going to do, but also put focused resources. And when I first heard the idea, I thought it was something really worthwhile investigating. And so I went there to talk with him, and as well as talk to the leadership of the church, and to experience that and to really see what they're doing. And there are clear things that I have learned from that experience that we're going to begin to implement here that will fund forward-going vision there as well. And then the third thing is, one of the things that happens in church life is you very quickly, if it's a growing congregation, you outgrow the structure that's in place. And the same thing happens in business, the same thing happens at really kind of any organization. And you need to develop the structure. Like, you can build a structure that's actually too big, or you can build a structure that's too confining. And ultimately what happens then is the structure kind of takes over. But at the same time, if your structure does not expand with what's happening, then it becomes a lid on the organization. And so for us as a congregation, we have, I've been here for over 20 years. And regularly, almost like every other year, we have to re-examine our structure so that the structure supports the growth and supports what God is doing and does not become a limiting factor in that. And honestly, we are at that place right now where we've grown, the building is here, it's functioning, but we need to work at, okay, what's the next structure that God has for us as we begin to move forward? And so I was working with a few people that can help with leadership structure as well. And then in all of that, there was rest and there was perspective. It's been a challenging time. That's not just true for me. That's true for anybody that's actually doing anything. I mean, if you're living life, it's a challenging time. We reach decision overload, we reach information overload, and we've been through a lot as a congregation. And when I say a lot, it's not been a lot of bad things, it's actually been a lot of good things. But there's been some recent things that have been especially challenging as well. Somewhat circumstantial. We entrust those things to the Lord. But in all of that, it's been very, very good. So I want to wrap this up by a couple of things. One is I really want to say thank you to the congregation of Ephrata Community Church for giving me the opportunity of doing that. It's not just for me, but it's for all of our pastors. And it is a very good and helpful thing that ensures longevity and perspective and health and strength, not only for the leaders, but also for the entire congregation. So thank you. Thank you to the team, the whole ministry team that we have here in leadership. That would include our elders, pastors, support staff, and all of that, because they carried a little bit of an extra load during this time as well, and I really appreciate that. Thanks to the congregation for permitting that, and ultimately, just thanks to the Lord for meeting me in the midst of it. So I'm very, very grateful and looking forward to 2021 and beyond. As I close today, I want to mention this. This coming weekend, we will be installing Josh Vanderplate as our pastor of worship. And that's the culmination of about an 18-month process of, and possibly, depending on how you could even go a little bit longer than that, of discerning both for us as elders, both for the leadership team, and then of course for Josh and Yolanda as they consider that as an opportunity. And I feel like, man, God has led us in a very clear and wise decision to install Josh Vanderplate as our pastor of worship. And really looking forward to it. It's a very, very significant time this weekend. And then secondly, part of this weekend as well is Mark Ulrich. So Mark has been our pastor of worship, and he's actually working in Connect groups as well. And his role is shifting from managing a little bit of two of those to focusing on our Connect groups. But Mark has been leading worship here. I mean, we're talking 40 plus years. And I mean, what an amazing legacy of leading people into the presence of the Lord. And so part of what we're doing, not only this coming weekend, but also there's some, beyond that, is to really honor that. He's going to continue to be part of the worship team. He's going to continue to be, he'll lead worship, as he sees fit. And so it isn't like he's giving that up completely, but as far as the primary leadership role, it's going to be shifting to Josh. And one of the things that you'll hear this weekend is Mark's full affirmation in what he sees in Josh and some things unique to ministry and worship here at Ephrata Community Church. So do not miss this weekend, Saturday 6 p.m., Sunday 8:30, Sunday 10:30, and Sunday 6 p.m. Be a part of that. You do not want to miss that. Hey, be blessed. Have a great rest of your day. And again, we'll look forward to seeing you this weekend.
Hey, thanks again for joining us today. We hope that you've been encouraged by listening and that you'll join us again next week. You can listen to previous episodes, find additional resources, and of course, learn more about us by visiting EphrataCommunityChurch.com.